We're ready.
Okay. Call the meeting to order.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second,
I'll second it, David.
moved and seconded. Question? All in favor?
Aye.
We have an agenda. Conflict of interest, if any. Draft budget staff.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Through you to the members, I would just like to say thank you to Mary Kay and her team. And I'll say this again, Mary Kay, in terms of the team, small team, but a great leader on that team. We have some good news in this budget in terms of how we've been listening to what members have been telling us overall. There are undoubtedly some increases in there that we have to manage. And I think that the team has done a very good job, and I look forward to hearing comments of the members who have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just get Amanda to bring up the presentation. We're going to do it in a little bit of a different order than you received your package. We're going to do planning and development's budget first, as Lonnie's joining us from vacation day, so we can get him on first and then he can go about his day. Perfect. Okay, so as you are probably aware, we have been working on this budget for several months, and we're looking forward to today where we can get feedback from the committee so that we can make it a budget that's going to work for everyone that's involved. And we do understand the pressures that you're facing as municipalities. So we've tried to be as cost conscious as possible so that we can make this budget palatable. So just to give you an overview.
Okay. Okay, maybe I'll. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you on speaker from my phone right into the meeting. How would that be? So you're going live, and Mary Kay was just introducing your budget. Okay. Okay, Lonnie, you're on live, and I hope you can hear Mary Kay through this as well.
Hi, Lonnie. I'm just going to give an overview and then I'll turn it over to you, okay? All right, so just for overview of the entire budget. So our member charges for our newer services that we started in 2023. For 2026's budget, we're proposing a decrease of $46,632. That's on top of a decrease that we did in 2025 of over $350,000. So we're trying to get those as low as possible for the members. Now, the reason we're able to lower the member charges for these services this year is because of a change in the allocation of our corporate services expenses. And I'll talk about what that looked like when we look at corporate services. Our participating member charges for planning and development, we're proposing an increase of $217,000 for 2026. And we're proposing a $5 increase to the solid waste tipping fee, which would bring it to $109 per ton. So for planning and development budget, 76% of the expenditures in planning and development consist of salaries and benefits. So it's a large chunk of their budget. For 2026, we've added one additional employee, which is a building permits coordinator. And Lonnie's going to talk about the necessity for that position in a minute. Other factors that are increasing the planning and development budget is the rental costs, which reflects our new space that we're in today. There's been a change to the Service New Brunswick software licensing, whereas previously we could share licenses. We now are required to have a license for each individual employee. So that's driving up some licensing costs. Because of the change in the corporate services expense allocation, planning and development is paying a larger share than they have in previous years. But we are using regional services support funding to pay for these new costs that came about in 2025 and 2026. So in 2026 budget, you'll see $199,000 come in as revenue from regional services support funding. So Lonnie, I'll just turn it over to you, and if you can give an update on the building permits coordinator and anything else you want to touch on.
basically, in my budget this year and in years past, we've had 3.5, building inspectors. We were able to make building inspectors, more efficient on site by using technology. Then along comes the province and they change a bunch of things. So our efficiencies on site are what they are, but the office part of it, the getting and getting the information in has taken a significant hit. We have become the legislative gatekeeper. I know the province didn't ask you, they didn't ask me, it's just in legislation. And what does that mean? That means before we issue a building permit, we have to make sure that each applicant has septic well loss at 911. So they may not use these things until the house is pretty near built, but we have to have the permits up front. The province has not upped the staffing on their end, and it's taking us a long time to get them permits in and get them put with the appropriate permit to be issued. Used to be, we had a wonderful thing whereby the province would go and not issue an electrical permit until you got your building permit. Somebody complained, they got away with that. So consequently now, the first permit that you can get if you want to build a house is an electrical permit. That leaves us chasing you down. Their solution to that was to send us a list every week of how many electrical permits they issued. That list every week has close to 500 permits in it. It's a lot of work. The other part of it is they have changed the National Building Code to include a whole bunch of Tier 2 energy efficiency stuff. That means in order to get a building permit, you've got to be 10 points of energy efficiency. Nobody in the public knows how to do or what to do to get that. So consequently, inspectors are explaining that to every applicant. So we need somebody to help with these things. So we're not looking for a full position. There will be a full position for the building permit coordinator, but I'm going to use my already budgeted half building inspector and put it with half of a new position budget, which will create the one position for the building permit coordinator. So I hope that explains that. If it doesn't, I'm happy to take questions.
Thanks, Lonnie. So I will jump into the budget so that Lonnie can answer any questions he might have.
One piece of, like, just to clarify before we move, I'm sure you will as we go through the day, but before the morning, it's how the RSSF funding being used in the program where not all members participate doesn't, I'm assuming, impact on or reduce our access to other RSSF funding.
That's a great point. So we have a surplus of RSSF funding that we've been carrying forward from 2024. We'll have a surplus in 2025 because it is a 50-50 cost share. And we have not met the threshold to be able to claim all of that RSSF funding. So because we have a surplus, there's no impact to the 3 non-participating members in planning and development because they're not losing any money because we're allocating it to planning development and taking away from services that everybody receives. So,
and that's even with the change that the province has made related to more flexibility to disperse those.
yes, so in 2026, we are able to claim 25% of RSSF for regional infrastructure cost sharing. So we can use some of those surplus funds if there's a project that is regional in nature. But it's only 25%. So again, there's a cap as well. All right.
Mary Kay, if I could, Mr. Chair, sorry, just to review some numbers. Even with the flexibility that was built into the RSSF, we still have to overall match 50-50. That was not taken out of the equation. It was just in how you could utilize it differently. And the additional, as Mary Kay explained, for the 25% for infrastructure, recreation, cultural infrastructure projects.
Yeah, so based on the budget that's before you, we have maxed out at 50%, and we still have about 250,000 in 2026 that we could access, plus the previous year's amounts that we have not claimed against, which amount to over 600,000. So there's definitely a surplus of RSSF funding. We just have to find ways to use it before it expires, if that's the board's choosing.
What's the expiration?
It's 3 years' time. We have till 2027 for the first year.
In 3 years' time.
So 2024 will expire in 2027 and so on. Okay, so getting into the planning and development budget. As you can see, for total planning and development revenue, we have a total budget of $2,554,000. We have other revenue of $10,000. That's our blue plate sales. That's up for $3,000 from the previous year. We have regional services support funding included in this budget of $199,000. That's due to paying 50% of that new position as well as the increased rent. And our second previous year surplus that came in from 2024 is $41,000. That's down from the previous year, but we did choose to transfer $135,000 to a reserve fund. So that's why it's a little bit lower than what it was in the previous year. It's in a reserve fund right now. So what that means is total budget of 2.554 less the other sources of revenue is what we have to charge the participating members to make up. So the total participating member charges for 2026 would be $2,304,000 or $217,000 higher than what they were in the previous year. That represents 3.56 cents on the tax base versus 3.55 cents in 2025. So when we allocate our fees, we are actually a year behind in tax base. So for our 2026 budget, we use 2025's budgeting numbers. So we actually did see an increase, even though tax bases are going to be frozen. We'll experience that in our 2027 budget. For expenses, we have salaries and benefits of $329,000. So for salaries and benefits, we do have a CPI adjustment for all of our staff, which is 2%. And we've also allocated how one particular staff member, our general manager of planning and development, he splits his time between between administration, building inspection, and planning and development. So his allocation was changed. So that's why you see he's spending more time on administration this year. It's not that there's additional resources in there. It's his time is being allocated there and less to building inspections. No change to advertising or bank charges. They're consistent with the previous year's budget, as well as insurance. Our meeting expenses are down. We've budgeted $2,000 for those. Our professional services are up $3,000 from the previous year's budget. That's due to increased legal costs related to the appeals that we're experiencing. Our rental costs are up just over $19,000 to $156,941. That is due to the new rental space, obviously. Our office expenses, however, are down $10,950 to $45,000 because we're now allocating cleaning costs to corporate for their share of the cleaning costs associated with the new space. Courses and subscriptions, particularly licensing subscription, is up $17,500. That has to do with the Service New Brunswick licensing that we were talking about. So now each staff member, we have to pay for a license for them. Our telephone and utilities is down to $20,000. That's because our power costs in this new facility are covered under the rental costs. Translation is up to $5,500. Travel's down to $4,000, and capital purchases, which would be computers and software, budget of $9,000. So overall, our administration expenses are up just over $64,000 to $633,127. major factors there are the rent, as well as the service and public licensing. So on the next page, you'll see the building inspection services budget. So for 2026, for salaries and benefits, we've budgeted $510,000. That is down $13,000. Now it includes a CPI adjustment. It includes a building permits coordinator position, but it also includes less of Lonnie's time. So that's why you're seeing the decrease there. We have small budgets for clothing and apparel, memberships, training and development, and our travel budget is up slightly just to reflect the actual amount that people are traveling, and we'll have a CPI adjustment to our travel rates. So overall, building inspection expenses are $569,582, or $13,000 less than what they were budgeted for in 2020. For planning and development expenses, we have salaries and benefits of $1,111,000. That's up just under $102,000 from the previous year. That again has to do with the CPI adjustment as well as the allocation of time. Lonnie spending a lot more time on planning and development versus building inspection. Professional development, we've adjusted that downward based on where the development conferences will be held in 2026, and then travel is up to $20,000. That again reflects actuals and CPI adjustment. So total planning and development expenses budget is $1,144,000, or almost $104,000 increase from the previous year. For planning advisory services, we have a decrease in our meeting costs of $1,600, and per diem that's paid to the members of PRAC is pretty consistent with last year of $15,000. So overall, small decrease in our planning advisory services to $21,440. Now our allocation from corporate services expenses is up. We'll talk about why that is when we get to corporate services budget next, but it's up $43,000 to $186,000. So adding all those expenses together, that's how you arrive at the total budget of $2,554,000, or $196,000 increase. And again, just to recap, what's driving that increase is the S&B licensing, the rent, and one additional employee, and the allocation from corporate services. That's the increase in a nutshell. If we go to the next page, you can see what that actually means for the participating members. So planning and development costs are allocated based on share of the tax base. So you can see the second column is what the 2026 participating member charges will be versus last 2025's participating member charges. So overall, there is an increase for each different municipality. You can find your various one. The lowest would be Tracy at $1,400, and the highest, I believe, is Hanwell at
$39,000. Is that formula consistent throughout the 12 RSCs? Is that the volume that everyone's using, the tax-based allocation?
Yes. Yeah, that's
just that we know that as we develop, we will have different needs for support by community going forward. Moved into a different type of formula.
That is dictated by the province, the tax base. Yes. Now, there may be additional services that they might provide external to that. I'm not sure, John, if you know that, or Lonnie might know that.
Lonnie, can you hear? Are you still on with us, sir? Are there any additional services that the province may be adding in terms of for planning and development services based on communities' needs and size?
Essentially, there is talk that they're going to upgrade or change the provincial building regulation and the provincial subdivision regulation. They will have some effects on the local bylaws, but there shouldn't be major changes at this point. The next major change will come with the code adoption, which is rumored to move from 10 points for energy efficiency to a requirement of 20 points.
And Lonnie,
That's a year or two off.
Do you know if there's any like fee, like charges for specific fees that are external to just the regular member charges that any our other RSCs would charge?
I'm not aware of any. We provide more services than any other planning commission, and we do it without extra charges.
Thank you.
There's no population in this formula, just strictly tax-based.
Strictly tax-based.
Any questions for Mary Kay before we move on?
Mr. Chair, if I may, it would be okay to excuse Lonnie if it's the will of the members to excuse Lonnie at this point. He is chiming in from a vacation day and
Well, let's keep them on then. I think it's okay with me. Anyone have any questions for Lonnie before he leaves? Lonnie, thank you very much. Continue.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, so we can continue.
So the next budget is the corporate services budget. So this is where I would usually start because corporate services are the expenses that support the entire commission and they're not division specific. So the expenses get allocated out to each individual division's budget to pay for. And so we've had a change in how we have allocated these expenses for 2026. So in prior years, all of our divisions or funds shared equally in paying for the corporate admin expenses, which is items like audit fees, legal fees, rental costs. So everybody shared equally for the first 2 years. In 2026, we've changed it up how we're allocating it. And what we've done is each division will pay proportionate to their share of the total budget. So if it's a smaller budget, like say for public safety, less of those admin expenses will be paid for by public safety. So what that means is the newer services or the services that began in 2023 are all, well, for the most part, except for economic development, will pay less corporate allocation, but our established funds, which are larger, like planning and development and solid waste, they're going to bear more of those administrative costs than they would have under the old formula. So in 2026, what's driving our corporate service budget is we have additional board costs, which reflects the additional budget meetings to include 2 committee of the whole meetings. It also reflects our actual rental costs for our new office space, which we did not know for sure when the budget for 2025 was completed. And we also have set up costs with regard to the boardroom. We are incurring some expenses in 2025, but some of those will be pushed into 2026 as well. So the budget reflects that. So for corporate services, we have salaries and benefits of $1,225,000. That's pretty flat compared to the previous year's budget. We did have the retirement of 1 staff member, which left some savings. There was adjustments to other staff members' compensation to reflect the additional work that they would be taking on. And a part-time resource was added with regard to corporate services, plus the CPI adjustment of 2%. So that left a little bit of savings, about $2,000. For our governance expenses, as I mentioned in the honorariums, that reflects 2 additional committee of the whole meetings for the budget. Our meetings, we've increased the budget to $18,000. That's based on what we're actually seeing, which is the cost associated for a summer and a winter forum. We have our travel costs at $13,000. That's based on what the actuals are to date, as well as a CPI adjustment. And then our training and development, we've reduced that to $15,000. That seems like more than enough to orientate a new board when the elections happen. So overall, our governance expenses are $137,403 for an increase of over $17,000. So these administration expenses, those are the expenses when I was talking about how we changed the allocation method. These are particularly related to these expenses. So we have travels increased by $2,000 to $8,000. Our training and conferences, we've reduced that by $1,500, the budget of $2,500. Our audit fees are up $1,000 to $33,000. Public relations remains the same at $20,000. Our liability insurance is down. We're seeing a decrease in our premiums in our insurance across the board, which is good news because they've increased significantly over the last few years. It's a budget of $50,000. Professional services of $40,000. Legal remains the same at $10,000. Our membership and subscriptions are up $5,000 to a budget of $10,000. IT support is up, reflecting actuals of $70,000. Office equipment and supplies, we budgeted $30,000. Again, that includes completion of the boardroom setup, so that's a one-time cost. So I expect that to go down again in 2027. Our office maintenance, that's the new amount for cleaning costs that previously we were not charging to the corporate services, but that's $18,500 for corporate share. Rental costs of $93,000, that's about $56,000 higher than what it was under the old space. Telecommunications is down $1,000 to $5,000. Translation is up slightly to $12,000. Banking service charge up slightly to $5,000, and then the HST just is a flow through of every other expense is an increase. So overall, administration expenses are $524,000 or $104,000 dollar increase from the previous year. That basically is due to the increased rent, as well as the cleaning and then the one-time boardroom costs. So corporate services expenses budget is $1,887,302, or just under $120,000 increase. That cost of the 1,887, you're going to see that flow through in all the various budgets, and you'll see the difference from the previous year as well. Any questions on that one?
When you have one-time costs, why is that not potentially looked at from reserve?
We could potentially do that. We did establish a reserve fund. No, sorry, there's no reserve for corporate services. Yeah, so all of the individual funds have reserves, which we could look at bringing it in. I mean, some of the smaller ones, public safety, sport, recreation, they don't have them. We could, but it would have to come in from the various different funds because these expenses get allocated out to pay for. So it could, and I would do that. Like if it was a planning and development and they were doing an upgrade, I would probably look at taking it from the reserve fund. Corporate services is a bit more complicated because of the way it's allocated out.
Okay.
On that point, though, if it's a capital reserve, that's one question.
It has to be.
If it's the operating reserve, then based on the idea of the operating reserve, it should come in here as a request to use operating reserve funds.
Yes.
Yes. I guess if you get to a point where we're already allocating our operating reserve when we do our budget,
Yes. Yeah.
we're breaking the rule, I guess, for having that operating reserve, although I understand some communities are moving in at the beginning of the year, flipping their operating reserves into operating. So
Yes, either one can be done. You just have to use capital for capital, operating for operating, and then determine what your policy is around operating, whether you're going to determine you can use it just for regular budget items or one-time costs as they come up, kind of an emergency fund.
any further questions?
Okay, so that brings us to cooperative and regional planning. And again, just to kind of remind everybody what cooperative and regional planning is, it really facilitates cooperation between the members, which includes regional planning discussion. So it's a very basic budget. And what is driving the decrease in 2026 is the lower corporate services expense allocation. So if we start with expenses, which is about halfway down the page, you'll see we have $50,000 budgeted for regional planning administration. That's consistent with the previous year. What the plan is for that is to review and update the strategic plan and the implementation guide. And then our allocation from corporate services is down $66,000 from the previous year. So that total is $252,000, which means our overall budget is down by that same amount, $302,459. Second previous year surplus was actually higher in 2024, bringing it into 2026 budget. So we have 42,000 that we can bring into the budget. Plus, we also did establish an operating reserve last year. So we have 35,000 in this cooperative and regional planning operating reserve fund. Regional services support funding is funding 50%, so that's 151,000, which is down because our costs are down, obviously, which means the member fees, if we take total expenses less the other sources of revenue, has to be 109,152, or a decrease of just under 53,000 from the previous year. Again, all driven by the change in the allocation from corporate services. Any questions on that one?
Any questions?
Yep, they want the RSF fund, RSSF fund.
Mhm.
Is there a max you can take on, not on just this line, but all the lines? Like, does that have a set fee? I know we have to match it,
It does.
but what is the set fee?
2.7 million, 2,751,870.
Right, I understand. Is there a set per line? Can that be moved around?
So that's what they changed in 2026, that as long as you overall fund 50%, you could apply more to cooperative and regional, less to economic development. So if we wanted to play around there, we definitely could. If people, like it's robbing Peter to pay Paul overall, your fees would remain the same, but you might want to pay more in economic development and less here. So yes, you absolutely can do that.
My reason for asking that question is so that we don't leave money on the table. Yes, there's a cost to paying the other 50%,
Mhm.
but if we have that increased cost, we can use all our allocated RSSF.
Yes. So under this budget, we are matching 50% of everything we can use. But if we increased our budgets and paid more, then we could access. So we get 50 cent dollars essentially. Yeah, you're
So
right on
we
there.
could increase some of these other infrastructure line or whatever and
And
use
match
up more
our-
of our
Yes.
RSSF, but we still, I understand we still have to pay the 50%.
Exactly.
I
You
just
got it.
want a clarification. I was quite sure it was that way.
And yeah,
No, I'm with you. I just want to make sure we maximize that $50
Mhm. Good investment.
Whatever, do great math, I can do that one.
Yeah.
it's, I think the question there would be is that are the members willing to invest to move strategic issues forward more rapidly? So, because that's really what we would need to be looking at, what's important to us and how quickly we're going to do it, and do we want to increase our community budgets to support? And that's a good question.
My personal answer to that is anytime I can get a 50-cent dollar, I'll take it.
And that's I think probably where the 25% regional infrastructure cost sharing comes in as well, because that opens a wide range of possibilities that maybe not operationally, but for that infrastructure and that capital that people might be interested in. All right, so the next budget that we have is tourism promotion. So the drivers for 2026, we have a contract with the city that provides these services, and that reflects a CPI adjustment that happens every year. As well, we have increased RSSF funding, which offsets a decrease in our second previous year surplus, which we'll see on the next page. So again, starting with expenses, we have a professional services budget of $1,561,000. That's a CPI increase of 1.2. Our allocation from corporate services is up slightly from the previous year, so just under 125,000. So overall, this budget is up 20,000 to 1,686,000. We did have a decrease in our second previous year surplus coming in from 2024. That's $1,242. Our SSF is funding $843,000, leaving the member charges at $841,971, or an increase of $17,162. Any questions on tourism? All right. Economic development is pretty much the same story. We do have the contract with Ignite, which is subject to a CPI adjustment. Something new in 2026 is we had a second previous year deficit, which is coming in from 2024. It's pretty small, but nonetheless, it comes in. And then we do have a higher allocation of expenses from corporate services because this is one of our larger budgets compared to the others. So for the expenses, we have our professional services of 2.3 million. The increase is CPI adjustment. We have our second previous year deficit of $5,855. And then our allocation from corporate services is up 46,000 to 169,000. So total expenses for economic development are 2,482,000. We did not have a second previous year surplus jumping up to the revenue. RSSF funding of 838,000. That's up just under 33,000 from the previous year. We do have PEDAL funding, which is our workforce labor force, of 805,000, and which the expense is included below in professional services because we have a contract with Ignite to spend those funds, which means our member charges for 2026 would be 838,000, or an increase of just under 40,000 for the year.
And the province won't allow us to match the federal funding with our SSF funding.
Yeah, so it's kind of designated for the Ignite contract, so we kind of don't marry the two of them. We keep that separate and pay that to Ignite.
Pedal's just an in and out.
It is, yeah. It's coming from PEDAL and it's going to Ignite.
And has the Ignite's contract been renewed now?
They're
2
until,
years.
2 years.
I have the privilege of seeing Ignite's financial statements also.
Yeah.
And this CPI is directly passed on from Ignite. Right? That's their increase. So.
That is in the contract, yes. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, anything's comments. So I know at least one other commission that's actually engaged early to renew their contract with their economic development provider. In terms of and restructured and they've offered a longer term agreement based on whether they had a 9 or a 10 year fund. I believe the other commission did it's a 9-year like ours. So
That one. I'm very happy with Ignite. I just was curious because I thought their contract was coming to negotiation process.
yeah, and they would like to get to a point where we are like the calendar year, but the funding that's provided comes in on the on the calendar. Theirs comes in on the fiscal through PEDAL, and so it's sometimes a little hard to marry everything up, but we'll certainly start conversations.
Right. That brings us to community development. So in 2026, we do have a change of employees, which resulted in a little bit less salaries and benefits having to be included in the budget. One thing that we changed is they're now sharing in rental costs. They do have 2 offices at this space, so they are paying for those out of the community development budget. And again, there's less corporate service expense being allocated to this smaller budget. So if we look at the expenses, you can see salaries and benefits are down 15,000 to 175,000. We've reduced professional services to 20,000. We have the rent, which is almost 15,000. Travel is down 7,500 because we've set up a training budget of 2,500. So that kind of offsets the decrease there. We have office expenses down to 5,000, and then printing, copying, telecommunications are consistent with the previous year. So overall, our operating expenses for community development are down 8,100 to 233,000. Our allocation from corporate services is down significantly by about 86,000. The reason for the significant decrease there is our former COO's time was spent significantly on community development, and with the additional employee, less time in the corporate service allocation for that expense. So total Community development expenses are down just under 95,000 to 319,000. Jumping back up to the revenue, you can see our second previous year surplus is down 25,000. But in 2024, we did establish a reserve fund, so it has $25,000 in it. So that's where that surplus went. It was really consistent with previous year until we did that, but it's sitting in an operating reserve right now. Our RSSF funding is down because expenses are down, so it's just under 160,000, as well as we do receive a grant from ESIC, a portion of which we retain for operational costs. So our member charges, that means total expenses less the other sources of revenue. Our member charges are $135,801, or a $14,000 decrease from the previous year.
Any questions on community development? Yes.
Director Rogers.
Yeah, I was just wondering on this one. So I know it's pretty, we don't, community development hasn't fully gotten its groove. I think a lot of it's because the mandate service isn't very clear yet from the province about how extensive that's supposed to be, and entirely what the role is supposed to be. But I'm just wondering, do we feel that currently where community development stands, that we're getting a bang for our buck for the $319,000? And so that, I guess, would be one question. The more important question, or do we feel that we're positioned to adapt to whatever it is the provincial government determines is going to be the role of the community development, I don't know, the efforts in community development of the Regional Service Commission?
I see those two questions as being extremely important, but as being more a management question as we move forward than directly at the budget at this point in time. It's just my opinion, but John, maybe you want to.
So thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and to you, Director Rogers, and to the committee members. I guess if we look at some of the progress that we've made under community development, we had an 8-point program that was put together by the community development team, presented through the committee to the board, and was accepted, and that's been being implemented over the last year. Some of those have included, I don't have a full list in front of me, but some of those have included grant writing workshops, community connector programs, partnering with GFS on food security programs. So there's been a lot of work done in the community development realm, as well as working with our other partners and participating with things such as when the CARE strategy was developed, and now some of the follow-up to that that's happening in the region. And that's of course the attraction, integration, and retention strategy within that. So there's been a lot of work done. Maybe at the ground level, we're now partnering a lot more with the partners in the communities. I do know that we've been developing a better relationship, a stronger relationship with the city, with GFSI, with Director Nicklin's area, with his community integration team. So there's a lot of partnerships being developed. So I guess as the chair said, Director Corey, it's a management question, but I would have to say, yes, we're getting a very good bang for the buck in that division.
So the larger budgetary question, I guess, is just knowing that the provincial, I don't know, guidance is going to, I think we all know that they've never been very clear on what this work is supposed to look like. My sense from our day together and day with them is that thinking is continuing to sort of evolve, and I'm just wondering if we feel that this budgetary amount is flexible enough that it can cover whichever way that it goes. I think I'm aware of, I stay up to date on what's happening, what their work is. I'm just wondering if this amount addresses, it's not really clear cut, that mandated service. And so I was just wondering if we feel this amount is appropriate given that.
I think that's John will address that, but that is one of our difficulties as we go through this budget this year. There are a number of provincial government initiatives that could impact us during the year. We'll hope that they don't do that. We really can't plan for what we don't know, I guess, at this point in time. So, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, Director Rogers, a very good question. I believe we can pivot. I believe we can support what may be coming down the pipe, so to speak. I've had a briefing, at least a high-level briefing, with the Department of Environment and Local Government and Social Development, talking about some new guidelines that they're looking at being implemented, but it's not something right at the point in time yet that we're concerned about or anything. It just gives more clarity. And in terms of that, I think the overall that we're well positioned. We have professional staff. We're working with your professional staff, the professionals out in Grand Lake and all around the region, actually. And I think we're able to pivot and be nimble. And we had a great conversation with some potential partners yesterday, as well as recently as yesterday, to talk about moving forward and how we do that in the best cost-effective manner. And also, just to add to that, we have the synergy study, which is to ensure that we are not duplicating services and what could potentially be those projects that we as a region support once we receive the pivot report early fall. I hope that helps, Director Rogers.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, and move on to regional transportation.
Okay, so for regional transportation, again, more of the same. We have less corporate services expense allocation. If we jump to the next page, you'll see on the expenses, there's no change to our maximum cost of the urban rural rides contract. That remains at just under 90,000 with the HST portion. But our allocation from corporate services is down just under 42,000 to 60,000. So overall, this budget is going to decrease to 149,697. We have a second previous year surplus of 20,000 coming in. That's in addition, we do have 20,000 that we did set aside in 2024 to the operating reserve. So that sits there. We have an ESIC grant that pays 50,000 of that urban rural rides contract. RSSF is paying for 74,848, which means our member charges were able to reduce by just over 16,000 to $4,429.
Questions on the regional transportation? Like the previous one, I would say that during the year we may want to have some management discussions. Questions for that? Moving to public safety.
Public safety, again, we have less corporate service expense allocation. So looking at expenses, we have some administration expenses for printing as well as professional services. That's for the forums that public safety puts on. So that total is 7,500. Our allocation from corporate services is 63,000, or a decrease of 33,000 for a budget of 70,957. We have a second previous year surplus of 3,900. RSSF of 35,000, which means our member charges are down by just under 19,000 to 31,549.
Questions on the public safety budget?
Right. So for sport, recreation, and cultural infrastructure, again, less corporate service expense allocation. So you can see on the expenses, we have professional services of 60,000, would be continued work on trail development expansion, as well as cost sharing options for projects that could be used for that. We have our allocation from corporate services of 94,000, which is a decrease of just under 23,000 for a total budget of 154,508. Our second previous year surplus coming in is $9,090. Our SSF is 77,000, meaning our member charges are pretty consistent with the previous year, a total of $68,164.
Questions on the sport, recreation, and cultural infrastructure budget?
Okay, so the next slide that we have is a summary of the newer services charges. So you can see we have tourism promotion across the top, all the newer services. The total is the total member charges. If you add them all up, you see the total 2026 member charges. So versus the 2025 member charges. And the last column is what you really want to know is how much less are you paying? Or there's two that are actually going to pay a little bit more. So there is a decline for all members except two, as I talked about. Nashwauk and Sunbury York South are seeing a small increase. The reason for that being is their tax bases grew faster than others in 2025. So typically we saw tax base increase from 2024 to 2025 of 8 to 9%. They saw 13 and 14% growth. So that's why there's actually increased a little bit. So Nashwauk increases 417. Sunbury York South 1,220. Everybody else is decreased, largest being Fredericton of 32,000. Smallest Tracy of 103. Any questions on that? And those charges are allocated. So tourism and economic development are share of the tax base. All the remainders are share of the 50% share of the population and 50% share of the tax base. That's how those charges are determined.
Any questions on the member charges? Okay.
All right, so that brings us to solid waste. Okay. All right, so for solid waste, we did have a change to our recycling operations, as everyone's aware of. In our 2025 budget, we did not have the final contract with Scotia, so it was based on assumptions. So 2026 reflects reality of what we are currently seeing since that contract went into place in February. We did have a large second previous year surplus in 2025's budget. We've talked about that. So essentially off the top, we had about 800,000 that we had to make up from the change from 2025 to 2026. So that was the challenge that we were going to be facing, and we knew that going in. We did see a significant increase in our corporate service expense allocation. Solid waste has by far the largest budget, so they would bear the majority of those corporate services expenses under the new method that we used. And then in June's meeting, we did talk about the need to build up our capital reserve fund. So that's going to be the focus for our next 5 years so that we can meet our infrastructure needs come the early 2030s. So we have increased the amount that we would transfer into a capital reserve fund by 75,000 in 2026's budget. Overall, despite all those challenges, we were able to reduce our operating expenses by 118,000 or 1%. What that means overall, though, because we are trying to make up that second previous year surplus while still funding that capital reserve fund, we're proposing a $5 tipping fee increase for 2026, which would bring the tipping fee to $109 per ton.
And how many tons a year are we dealing with?
86,000. So we have seen a steady increase in those. It used to be about 5 years, we were at about 79,000. It's slowly grown. And then in 2024, we were at a little over 86,000.
Yeah, we'll go into the detail there.
Okay, so we'll start with revenue and solid waste. So for regular garbage, as we talked about, we're proposing a $5 increase to the tipping fee, which is based on 86,000 tons. So overall, that gives us additional revenue of 438,000. Construction and demolition waste, we are seeing an increase to that tonnage as well. So we've increased the budget from 6,000 tons to 7,000 tons for 2026. So that gives us additional revenue of 42,500. The recycling operation, so we are seeing a decrease here. This reflects the Scotia agreement and the current level of tonnage which is coming in. However, we do expect that tonnage could grow as we get further on in that contract. So that is an opportunity there, but we are basing this budget on what we are actually seeing right now. For other revenue, we have an increase in our interest income. We are claiming RSSF in solid waste for the first time because of the additional corporate service allocation that we are doing. So that's 120,000. And then we have a trade-in value for one piece of equipment, which is a dozer, which is being replaced in 2026. So overall, our other revenue is up 358,000. Rental is up by 60,000, so that's due to an increase in the tonnage in the soil remediation that we receive for the company that rents land from the landfill. And then, as we talked about, our second previous year surplus is down 798,000 to 253,000. However, it is important to note that in that year we did transfer 900,000 to reserve funds. So if we had left it in here, it would have been about the same, but now we have it in reserve funds. Gives us more flexibility when we choose to use those. So overall, our total budget is actually down for solid waste to 11,483,000.
So that increase of $430,000, that'll go to surplus?
It's just used to balance the budget. So you're going to see the expenses and where it goes. So we're going to put some additional funding into the reserve funds. We have the additional corporate services allocation costs that we have to pay. So those are kind of offsetting the decreases in revenue.
Well, I thought our budget went down from last year.
We did.
So if we're increasing $5 per ton, we should have that revenue above.
But we lost it below, like in the second previous year surplus. So because one went down, it's to balance it out. Yeah. So we don't have additional money. It's just that.
And we transferred $900,000.
We did. So we have those in reserve funds. Yeah. So we're building those reserve funds. In a normal year, if we weren't saving up for infrastructure projects, I would say, let's take some from our reserve funds and keep that at a lesser tipping fee increase. But because we know our needs in 2030 and we know we need that 9.6 million, we've really got to focus on that in the next 5 years, or we're going to be in trouble.
And I think we have to understand that from an interest point of view, we're in a much different environment than we were 5 years ago. When we borrow now, it's much more significant.
Yes.
Oh, Director Fox?
Yeah, question on construction demolition. So, if I'm understanding this correctly, we're just making an increase in the income, the revenue on that, on the tonnage. We're not increasing the tipping fee on that.
That's correct. In this budget, we've only increased the estimated tonnage. The reason is, and we talk about it every year, whether we want to increase construction and demolition, but if you get it too high, then it promotes illegal dumping. And Brett can probably jump in and explain this much better than me, but we just want to keep it so that people are willing to bring their construction demolition waste to us rather than dumping it out in a forest somewhere.
Yeah, I get that, but everything's increasing. So why do the taxpayers continue to pay more in tipping fees, and then you have this this part is I mean, even if you increased it by the same percentage amount, like maybe not, it wouldn't work out to the $5, it would be more like $2, but at least it's spreading the pain around a little bit.
Sure, I understand that. Brett, is there anything else you want to add there? I understand your point, Director Fox. So maybe Brett and I will discuss that and see. I mean, we could definitely increase it. I'm not opposed to that. It's just that is the reasoning behind why we have not increased it.
What is the cost of the CUD?
$42.
$42 and change.
Yeah.
I could do the math. It's just easier to ask. I don't disagree with Director Fox that I think fortunately it should be at least increased.
And then by, if you're able to do that, then you might be able to take a little bit more off the tipping fee for regular garbage. Not going to be a lot, but
Yeah, no, it's
I want to save every penny.
sure. So it's about 14,000 on this budget. Um, it would say 14,000. That's
That's 14,000 you saved.
25 cents on the tipping fee.
Yeah, that's fine.
Any additional questions?
Just one point. Sorry, Mary Kay.
Mhm.
Through you, Mr. Chair, still even with the $5 increase on the tipping fee, when you go on the GND website and look down through the different commissions, we're still very, very competitive across the board, and certainly amongst the big three. So I'm not trying to compare apples and oranges because that's what you're comparing when you look at that list of costs, but I do want to say that we've been very well managed in that division. So.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that. I think, you know, we're a bit of a, maybe what you'd call a gold standard. We should strive to be the platinum standard.
Yeah, so I agree with the increase in the construction side as well, because people that are going to throw their garbage in the woods are doing it now anyway. They're not paying, especially in rural areas. We see it all the time, and we're asking our police to police that better. So, you know, having the construction pay along the exact same rate as the public, I think that just is a perfect solution.
Well, they're already a much discounted rate.
Yeah.
I don't think, 4.9% is going to.
So just an increase in the put in reserve then, maybe we'll get away from the reserve in 2030.
So there are other implications there too. I agree with that. That Brett says is a potential issue. However, a lot of the large contributors are required to bring their waste to the commission. So if there's something happening on a contract with us or with the city or under insurance claims, they have to validate that they have taken that to an appropriate site. So,
Such as an old property that's a tear down, it has to go on your site.
yeah, absolutely. So I think there are some controls on that now, and it's, I agree with the other directors that it's when we can see an opportunity for revenue that doesn't significantly impact our taxpayers directly. We should look.
Yeah, for sure. We can take that into consideration, and I'll touch base with Brett, and I can do a draft for next meeting as to what that.
Additional questions?
All right, so the next page is where we get into the expenses. So for salaries and benefits, we have a budget of $3,930,000. That's a decrease of $96,500 from the previous year. That reflects CPI adjustment for all staff, as well as we did reduce 3 seasonal operators, which were previously included in the 2025 budget. So that's why you're seeing those savings there. On the maintenance costs, we've had some adjustments just to get us to what the actuals actually are. But total budget is $1,523,000, or about a $9,400 increase from the previous year. For equipment costs, we did take a long, hard look at equipment costs to see where we needed to be and how we could reduce that. So we did look at our fuel costs. We've seen a decrease in the number of fuel liters that we're actually using right now based on what's going on at the landfill and the construction. So that's contributing to the decrease in fuel, as well as it does reflect a moderate decrease in the price of diesel. For maintenance and parts, that's decreased by $77,500. In 2025, we did include a one-time cost for undercarriage work on our dozer, so that did not need to be done again in 2026. So overall, equipment costs are down $177,500 to a total budget of $1,107,000. Our baler costs are reduced as well. So we did have a budget of $596,000 for 2026. That's $145,000 less than what was budgeted in the previous year. We are seeing decrease with regard to our wire costs. So we've reflected that in the budget, a decrease of $75,000. And then in 2025's budget, we did include an amount for our car conveyor to be replaced. So that did not have to continue in 2026. So that's why you see the decrease there. For waste diversion, we have 67,000 that relates to our CFCs, or the refrigerants that people bring in, and that is disposal charges, and they pay for those disposal charges. So that's included in recycling operations above. We previously had costs included for our Recycle at Work and our schools pickup program. Those are no longer being funded by the CRSC, so that's why you see the elimination of those two budget figures. So total savings of just under 100,000 on the waste diversion. For administration expenses, really, most of these expenses were just changed to reflect actual. So our advertising promotions is down 10,000. Professional fees is up 64,000. That reflects our engineering services. Our bank charges, more people are using their credit cards, so it's costing us more money. So that's increasing by 10,000. For insurance, we're seeing savings there, as I talked about before. We did go with a 3-year term for our insurance, so that resulted in some savings as well, which was nice. Property taxes is up 5,000. Our office cleaning expenses are up 15,000. Increases to courses and subscription is 7,000. And our utilities is up 15,000 based on the current power consumption. Health and safety, slight increase of 2,000. Travel and accommodations is up 10,000, and then uniforms increased 2,500. So overall, our administration expenses is up 96,500 to 1,374,000. Our debt servicing, we have a budget of 889,000. In 2025, we were scheduled to replace a piece of equipment, which at this point we're not going to be replacing. So we will not have those principal and interest payments starting in 2026. So that's why you're seeing some of the savings there. So it's down 232,000. Post-closing costs is the money we put away for when the landfill closes so that we have funds to pay for that. Total amount that we have to put away in 2026 is $12,090. For capital that will be paid for operations, we have 355,000 because of the savings in our debt servicing. We were able to pay for these through operations. They're small amounts. They include site paving, an amount for a wire tire, and as well as a tractor mower. We have our cell expansion costs, which are relatively minimal because we are piggybacking on top of those older cells. So we budgeted 100,000 for that. So total capital expenditures paid for through operations of 455,000. And then we have our transfer to reserve. So 50,000 to our operating reserve. We've increased our transfer to our capital reserve. It was 625 in 2025. We have included 700,000 for 2026, or an increase of 75,000. And then lastly, we have our allocation from corporate services. So total expenses being allocated is 779,000. That's an increase of 305,000 from the previous year, but it is partially offset by regional services support funding of 120,000. So overall, our total expenses are 11,483. When you factor in the $75,000 increase to the capital reserve transfer, the savings actually amount to 118,000 in operating expenses. So we're proposing a $5 increase for 2026. What does that look like for the future? So when we prepared a 4-year projection, based on the information that we do have right now, we can expect between a $3 and $4 tipping fee increase annually for the next 4 years to get us in the position that we need to be with a funded reserve fund of 9.6 million in the early 2030s. And I am hopeful that's probably on the high end, but as you know, I always like to be conservative in those estimates.
So I'm sure we have some questions.
Yes.
Director Duplisea.
So in total on the RSSF, we've added 2 new lines to use some of that here and the previous one that we didn't have before.
The previous one being planning and development.
Not the planning and development to the communities that participate, but there was another I'd have to go back and find it. It's,
All the other funds, I believe, had RSSF funding before. Solid waste never did, but what we did is we claimed 50% of the additional charges that they are bearing because the other ones paid it previously and they were getting a 50% cost share. So we spoke with the province and they seemed to be on board that we could justify because solid waste is taking on those additional fees. RSSF will fund those
okay,
administration
so this,
expenses.
these two are the same. Just stating it here. They're not different.
Yes, yeah, so this is the revenue coming in, this is the expense of which we are setting it with the budget.
Just one new allocation.
One new allocation of 120,000 for solid waste.
Any other questions? I do have one, and it relates to the RSSF win. In advertising, we have 180,000 here. Is that an another line where we may be able to get our SSF funding? I was thinking that we wouldn't be able to use our SSF funding maybe for solid waste, but if it's allowable. And then thinking more about consolidating advertising under one and then reclaiming it through the RSSF.
So the RSSF is very specific with regard to the established services like planning and development and solid waste. It has to be for new and innovative services.
Right.
So if the advertising was promoting something new and innovative, we might be able to claim that. If it's standard, then they don't pay for just operational business as usual kind of things. So it's something we could explore and I can talk with the PR manager.
I've noted that some of the other regional service commissions are putting a push on building permit. And what happens in educating the public very strenuously is bring that number of permits up so that we're not, as long as saying, chasing all the time and just about so.
Yeah, so if that's new and innovative, like to get more building permits issued, then you could make a case for RSSF. Yeah.
Yes, because, thank you, Mr. Chair. It has to be tied to your strategic plan.
Mhm.
So however creative we can be to tie that to the plan is it.
Is there any RSSF funding that could go toward trying to educate recycling more, take it out of landfill?
We're kind of
Is
out
that
of
new? I know we're out of it,
Yeah.
but can we, but if our residents don't recycle, it's costing the municipalities. Can we not put some funding into educating them
And-
further for that?
that historically has been what our push has been, but we've kind of taken a step back, whereas we're not responsible for recycling anymore. But if that's something strategically that the board or
But at the end of the day, we're responsible for what they don't recycle.
right, yes, then you have to pay the
That's the
tipping,
issue.
so that makes sense.
Director Rogers, Director Fox. Okay.
So what does that all mean? So we've looked at the estimated annual tonnage that each of the municipalities brings in. And keep in mind, this is estimated because you do pay on the actual tonnage you bring in. So this is just based on historically what we've seen. Your estimated fees, you can see that what that would be for 2026 with $109 tipping fee. The effect of the $5 is the last column. So for Arcadia, that's an additional $43.75. For Hanwell, it's $83.25, and it just really varies depending on how much tonnage you usually bring.
I think for our community and I'm thinking others, so because this is the first real year with circular materials, we don't have a sense of what actual tonnage is. We're seeing it month to month and we're starting to get an idea, but next year we would hope that we'd be better at being able to forecast that in our own numbers. I'm not sure whether the other communities are seeing it, so for us it's new. Because we had a system before where we were always, our provider always paid the tipping. So. Any questions about the impact? Well, it's a question for us, and that's the largest question of the day, really, for us. The $5 fee, how we wish to position it when we go back. We'll go. I'll take some time to talk about that after.
Perfect. So we talked about this briefly, but this is just so you can see the breakdown of the capital projects that would be funded through operations in this budget. We do paving at the landfill site every year to maintain it. That's $125,000. A wire tire, which is used to tie up the garbage into bales, that needs to be replaced. It's a cost of $100,000. And then a tractor mower to maintain the site is a cost of $130,000. So those would all come from operations. And then there are two pieces of equipment that would be financed through the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board. A dozer, which is a replacement for an estimated cost of $575,000, and then a smooth drum roller for a cost of $315,000. And then this is required that we inform the finance or the board when we apply to the MCBB. So the impact of borrowing this $890,000 for capital equipment is estimated to be $3,410 in our 2026 budget. And then going forward, it's $202,700 per year for the 5-year repayment, or it's $2.36 on a tipping fee, keeping in mind that we do retire debentures as we issue them. So in 2027, we have a debenture that's retiring for, I think it's an estimated cost of about $130,000. So it's not actually $2.36 on the tipping fee. It's more like $1.
How much construction material do we dispose of a year?
C&D, $7,000 right now.
And what is the difference in the tipping fee between the normal and?
So it'd be $109 if this, do you want the,
Yeah, what's the difference? What they currently do?
606.
So. So that's, if you did increase to be the same, that's more than the amount of increase you're gonna receive in starting 2026.
you're talking about increasing the construction demolition to $109.
Well, I don't understand why we're discounting something, but, anyway, that's just an idea.
The only thing is construction demolition does not require the same infrastructure that garbage does as well. Like it doesn't need a liner. It's really just a pit. So the costs are different. That's why they have been priced at different.
I think they're all under the same budget.
They are.
Mr. Chair, we'd be the only one, I believe, doing that if we were to do something that
Yes.
dramatic.
Yes.
I just want to flag that out for.
We also take the recycled stuff that's not compatible to recycle for $20 a ton.
When it's sorted,
Yeah,
I'm not 100%
That's the
what that
social
number
contract.
is. Yes.
yeah, we're taking that to the landfill for $20. Which, I guess, Brett, we talked about that one time, but I have issues of why it's that cheap.
Well, I'm just trying to save, costs down the road.
Mhm.
Maybe we should put the recycling stuff that doesn't fit. Goes to the landfill, the same as C&D.
It would have different materials that couldn't be included in C&D, but Brett, do you want to chime in here at all? He's the best one to talk about that.
Sorry, Brett, I was gonna say.
And I think that it's,
I'll try. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. I'm just gonna leave my camera off because I don't trust my connection. We're driving on the Trans-Canada right now. So I only caught the last bit of that, Mary Kay, but I can hear you very well. What exactly was were we talking about C&D rates?
Yeah, so we're talking about potentially increasing C&D rates to be the same as the garbage tipping fee, and we talked.
Okay, so just I'll speak to that first. The challenge there is that in garbage we have a monopoly, and it's legislated that way. In C&D, it is very much a competitive market, as Mary Kay explained, there's much lower overhead. It is a very different exercise. There's no baling. There's no geomembrane liners. There's no cell development, any of that. Having said that, my genuine concern and the reason that we've priced C&D consistently the way it is to remain competitive in that market and to receive some revenue. It would go to zero rather than increase. So that was the concern there. What was the other question, Mary Kay?
With regard to recycling, when it's the garbage that comes out of the recycling facility, we receive $20 per ton under the Scotia agreement.
Yes. Yeah. So previously, the garbage out of the recycling facility generated zero revenue, and the other side of it, it's not. This isn't municipal solid waste coming in with a tipping floor being processed.
You're cutting out on us, Brett.
But again, it's a different product. It would also. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I cut out there?
It did. We lost probably the last 20, 30 seconds.
Oh, shoot. Hello?
Hi.
We can hear you.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
This might be something we could discuss at next Thursday's meeting.
It's a flag for us as we get to the end of the meeting here. We'll take it down.
So Brett, I think what we'll do is we'll touch base on this information maybe next week, because we're not getting everything that you're saying.
That would. Sure. No, that'd be great. But if you can hear me, I would say that
Brett, if you can hear us.
So, and on this particular issue, there are long-term vision is important in all of our businesses, but in the solid waste side, given all of the window that we're operating under now, I think it's 2054.
I believe it's 7.
Yeah, so, and then the implication of decisions that we make that may look good for our budget, but don't look so good for others. At $66 a ton, and you can leave Fredericton and take the same job. You just will. That's so, and that would save us. Well, we'd lose that revenue too. The 42. So I think we need to think about at the same time keeping those costs contained as much as we can, which I believe we do. So at this point, I guess we can have comments from any of the directors about the major concerns. I do think we need to get some thought around whether we want to have another meeting next week before going to the committee of the whole, basically with council or with the board. Use my terminology there, but and whether that's a necessity, and I'm hearing some questions now that I would tell me that maybe it would be wise to have an update. Oh, excuse me, we haven't gone to generation. Thank you.
I'm almost done. I do want to make one more point with regard to the capital equipment is our debt service ratio with this borrowing would be just under 11%, which is very strong. Our debt management policies calls for a max of 15%. So we are well within that limit and we're doing really well there. And the last budget is generation facility. It's pretty quick. So we are continuing to see healthy surpluses in generation facility, but our production has been down in 2025. So in 2026 budget, we have adjusted our revenue projection to marry that. We are required to produce balanced budgets for all of our funds. This is the one kind of fund that actually kind of generates a surplus for us typically. So because we have to produce balanced budgets, any surplus in our budget, we just put it into a reserve fund. So you're going to see the amount for 2026 is $295,071 that we are budgeting to put into reserve funds for that. So starting with revenue, we have a budget for 2026 of $1,360,000. That's a decrease of $132,000, which is to reflect 2022's actuals to date. Our second previous year surplus is down. It's $28,592, but we actually had a record year in 2024, and we were able to transfer $730,000 to reserve funds. So it was a very good year. We just left less in our surplus, and therefore it comes in less in the budget. For our operational costs, we have maintenance and repair of $495,000. The $20,000 hourly maintenance interval is due on engine number 2, so that's reflected in our repairs and maintenance costs. Our operational costs, we are seeing a decrease in oil prices, so that's down about $20,000. Overall operational costs, $673,000, or a $24,000 increase. For administration costs, we're seeing savings with regard to our insurance, as well as our utilities. So total administration costs are $37,000, which is a decrease of $23,500. Our debt servicing remains consistent at $311,000. Allocation from corporate services is down $25,000 to $71,608, which leaves us with amounts that we can transfer into an operating reserve. We've chose to do $61,000. That will give us a fully funded operating reserve based on our proposed reserve fund policy. And that leaves $234,000 that can then go into our generation capital reserve for the time when those engines need to be replaced, which is about another probably 5 years. So overall, that produces the balanced budget that we need to for power generation.
Any questions on the generation facilities budget?
All right, the last slide that I have is really just a summary. So basically what you can see is across the board, all of our budgets are down except for local planning, tourism promotion, and economic development. So overall, we do have cost savings of $9,000 that we're able to pass on. How are we paying for our 2026 budget? You can see reflects in the changes in the 2026 revenues versus 25. So we do have increased RSSF funding of $75,000. We've decreased our member charges for the newer mandated services by $46,000. Member charges for the participating members for planning and development is up $217,000. We have increased sales of Blue Plate revenue of $3,000 for planning and development. We have a decrease in our second previous year surpluses, mainly in the solid waste, which was about $800,000 of $1,187,000, keeping in mind that $1.8 million was transferred to reserves. So we actually had more surpluses in 2024, just chose to put them in reserve funds. Our tipping fee increase will bring in $430,000. We have other revenue in solid waste, which is up $204,000. Energy production is down $132,000, and other funding is up $24,000. So that's how you balance out the differences in the budget versus the revenue. And with that, have any questions or discussion?
So as we go through the questions, we need to be thinking about, are we meeting next week, or are we moving to do the whole, I guess, with the board? And in order to decide on that, and it's the question is, how well have we done our work as a committee to identify the areas where the need questions, and if there's more information needed before we go back to the board, then we should be generating that information so that they have the opportunity to see the answers to questions that concern us. So we can start with questions wherever they are. Huh?
What is the exact figure of the RSSF unused?
For the current year or previous years?
all years. What's
Years?
left on the table today?
879,600.
Is there any possibility to use more or all of that? Yeah, our 50-cent dollar.
If we increase our spending.
Yes.
Yes, so
But-
there's an area
But
that,
I know we're increasing spending, but it's, you're getting half of that back.
Mhm.
That's kind of my issue of leaving it on the table. Is there any, in that way, we might have to meet next week if there's some. And if there isn't, it's the last stroke of the pencil, so.
there absolutely is if we want to increase the budget. It's whether the communities want to pay for, and there's an appetite to get that through.
With an assessment freeze, we also have to consider what the tolerance is for, we already know in our budget that the CPI will be our minimum on the rate.
Mhm.
So, and we know that there's zero tolerance for anything. But it's, yes,
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the members, Mary Kate's right. So it's either increase your spending in order to maximize the dollars, or take some time as a board, come together, as you had said, Mr. Chair, to have kind of a management conversation about where we want to go with that, and then take that funding and look at it, because I think Mary Kay, our first year carryover, we're good till 2027, you know? So it's not a panic. I don't want anyone to feel that we have to, we want to try to expend it as expeditiously as possible. We have some time, we can come together as a board, bring the board together, have the members have that conversation, look at that vision, and say, okay, this is where we think we should go for 2027, and we'll know more as we progress through the year, especially with the assessment freeze and that type of thing, all the reforms that GMD is doing, as well as what the CRSC review bring to us in terms of the services as well. So I think like there's not a lot of runway, but there's some runway left there before we have to. But
any questions? Yes, Director Rogers? Can't hear you. No,
you're on mute, Director Rogers.
can't hear you.
Sorry, I was gonna say, I don't have a question, but I have to leave. I've wanted to stay till the end, but I had a 12 o'clock and I'm now 5 minutes late, so I have to go. But if you decide to meet next week, if meeting is going ahead, I will see you then. And for now, I'm just gonna take all this and process it, and if we have a meeting next week, bring back maybe some questions.
It's starting to look like that.
Pardon me?
It's starting to look like we may.
Well, like we might. Okay, well then I'll see you then. Thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Take care.
But
Director Fox?
no questions right now, but I guess I'm hopeful that we'll meet sometime next week and kind of rehash some of this.
That is the question, and so the areas that we're looking for more discussion on are the Regional Services Support Fund maximization and the tipping fee increase and increased revenue on the solid waste side. Those are the keys that I was hearing as we were going through this.
Now, I think I'd also suggest maybe like if we all take the opportunity to review, and if we have those questions, maybe we try and get them in before the day of the meeting. And so that everybody can see what's being asked, and it gives staff a bit of a chance to maybe try and come up with some of the responses rather than have them like a deer in the headlights. And yeah, I think that's only fair for everybody. So if we're gonna meet on Thursday, let's say, let's get our questions in by no later than, Wednesday at noon or something like that. That's kind of where my head's at.
So.
No, I think if we're gonna do that, then the questions at the end before that.
I would say we had enough question marks in front of us this morning to warrant a meeting next week. So,
Yep. Agreed.
and it doesn't take a lot from me to get it organized, so. I'm happy to meet next week. So, well, with a motion to adjourn be in order.
I move to adjourn.
Done. We are out of business. Thank you.